Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Not sure whether you're sneezing over there or puking or what are you doing?
No, they were absolutely sneezes.
All right, good. That's good because I didn't know whether to get you a bucket. Brian, we need a bucket.
No, that's awesome. Hey, speaking of Brian,
Yeah.
I don't know when these things drop. I think we share behind the counter. We come in the studio at 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning and record 5 episodes and spread them out. So
Right.
I don't know when, you're the executive administrator. But we have a live mobile coming up.
Yeah, which is going to be pretty cool.
And Brian's going to run
so
that.
It'll actually be on the heels of this thing. Whenever you hear this, it should the live will actually be right after that. But then we'll also put them up on and drop them weekly. So you'll hear this in about 5 or 6 weeks. So
Yeah, so I don't know what the format of that is. I don't know if we're just going live or we're going to do segments.
yeah, we're just going to do yes and yes. We don't. Well, it's so funny. I mean, we don't know what we're doing.
just like we do now.
Yeah,
man.
like
We have-
18 seconds ago, we said, "What are we talking about today?" And we decided, yeah, okay. And then we go, "Okay, Brian, let's go live." So yeah, we have no idea what we're doing, and that's probably obvious to most listeners.
Yeah, but you know where my level of comfort comes in?
What?
Brian's going to be there.
I know, right? Yeah, it's like you got to have the surgeon in the surgery room.
Oh, absolutely, man. So it's fantastic. No, I'm looking forward to it. We're actually going to a retreat,
Yeah,
and
which is kind of a big deal. It kind of sounds hokey, you're going on a spiritual retreat for
today
AA.
it's an AA. It's a
thing.
sober retreat,
Yeah,
but perfect.
but that kind of sounds like overboard,
Yeah, but you know what? It's one of my 26 things I do a day, a week, a month, or a year. That's the only thing I go to one a year.
Yeah. And this one is being run by Karen, who's been on Sober.Coffee
Yeah,
before.
she's phenomenal.
She's great. She's
man.
a rock star. And so we're gonna go. We're gonna kind of go live. We're gonna maybe broadcast some on Instagram, right, or something like that. Can we do that?
Yeah, she actually asked me to take one of the sessions, and so I'm like, yeah, I prepare for it all. And I was on a call with her this week. She goes, "Oh, Glenn, I want you to do this session." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Oh no! So are you doing which one?
I'm doing the middle one.
Okay, gotcha.
Doing the middle one, which is, hey, but I actually prepared. I actually, normally I just go off the cuff and stuff, but I actually prepared, and I'm looking forward to it. And then our session on Sunday morning, Sober.Coffee Podcast, looking forward to that.
Right.
Some people are looking to jump in who have never been on so, super looking forward to it.
Oh, good.
A lot going on.
Yeah, there is a lot going on. There's a lot going on in sobriety. So I did Elizabeth and the group. We had a bingo night at the
I missed that.
at the hall. I'm telling you,
How much did you win?
my wife won $120.
Really?
Yeah. So she came. She had a great time. Sat with my sponsor and his wife.
That's a new source of income.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm trying to think who you're.
But the big winner was Elizabeth.
Don's your sponsor.
Don
right?
Hart.
All right. His wife's
Elizabeth-
Mary?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Very good.
All right.
Elizabeth was the big winner. Not only did she win 2 bingo cards, but then they had split the pot and raffles, and they just kept announcing Elizabeth's name.
So is that a part-time job for her now?
Yeah, right. Yeah, she had to claim it with the IRS.
Oh, hey, speaking of which,
Yeah.
I was recently in Vegas with one of my investors, right?
Oh, I'm jealous.
And I know, since you're not allowed there anymore. And so, we're playing these slot machines. And I don't think there's any strategy to slot machines.
No.
I just don't. But
Well,
he
you gotta
has
talk to it.
He strokes it, and
Whoa.
he's got a strategy. I
Okay.
mean, he walks around and studies them and
Okay.
the jackpot size, and he does
sure.
all that. So anyhow, we're sitting there playing, and he wins this jackpot, and the machine's frozen,
Oh no.
and you have to wait for the IRS agent to come and fill. If you win more than $1,250, they come and fill out an IRS form on the spot.
Wow. Are they so kind when you've lost $1,250?
No.
Do you get that as a write-off?
No,
Doesn't that make no sense to you?
does not make any sense.
Oh my
But what I understand is the player's card keeps track of the losses.
Okay.
But the wins, they fill out a form on the spot.
Wow. They take the money right on the spot then? Like if you
No,
get
they don't take taxes.
Because you're supposed to file those yourself.
Correct.
Okay.
But they send them into the IRS.
I've never been in this situation where the IRS was involved in one of my winnings at the casino.
He won $30,000 on one.
Wow.
And it's so funny. His system is, I'm not sure if our podcast about, gambling tips.
Right.
But his system is, so when he wins the 30 or wins the 10,000 or whatever,
right.
He takes the cash from it.
Okay.
And he puts 20% in one pocket, 20% in another pocket, like one for the IRS, one for Illinois, right? And then he puts the rest back into the action.
Okay.
So he goes, when I leave coming home, I got my taxes already in my pocket. I don't spend it. He's very disciplined. It was really cool.
Discipline.
Yeah, really cool.
So, hey, what's our topic for this morning? We talked about a couple things before.
I think we should get tighter on topics. I think.
I know, right?
I mean, we actually get some good feedback that that our winging it makes it real, right?
Right.
Especially when we talk about topics that are hot and live in our lives, it becomes real. But do you remember? I mean, back in the beginning, we were so regimented.
Oh, I had notes. I mean, like
I know.
Today, I came in with my coffee. That was about it, right? Yeah, but I think we were talking before we went live with when good isn't good enough, right? And that's kind of a interesting sentence, right? When good isn't good enough,
right?
And right now my life is good. My program is good. My finances are good. My health is good. But with each of those, I could say, but it's not quite good enough.
Yeah, or
if
I could expand on that a little bit, right? What happens when you've given your absolute best and you fail?
Mm-hmm. And that's happened.
So I'm probably going to make it a little bit more extreme.
Mm-hmm.
But so I think, the minute you say that, right, when good isn't good enough, I think of page 556 in the big book, right? And I'm telling you, I spent years and PhD after PhD after PhD trying to figure out why I drank, trying to figure out, right? But if you sit there in the big book, first of all, I think one of the winning strategies is coming into AA is, identifying the similarities, not the differences, right? Because I think people say, well, I never did that. I never puked in my car. Maybe I'm not an alcoholic, right? But if you sit there and say, okay, let me listen for similarities, right? How did they feel? Oh, I felt like that. Or, but if you read the big book and read the stories, I think if you don't find similarities with anything in the big book and the stories, you're in the wrong room.
Right.
But I think for me and for many others, I know you because you've shared many of your stories, there's all kinds of bells and whistles light off. Like, I can see myself in that sentence and that sentence. I did that. I felt that way, right? So in 556, in the upper left-hand corner, when I read it, it was like the ticket to the stadium. I'm like, okay, this is why I drank. And what it talks about is it talks about having a bar, right, of expectations, also known as a bar of what is good, right? and then they talked about, your another line of your line of actual performance, right? So you have a high bar of say, hey, this is what I expect. And as alcoholics, you're probably, right, super overinflated, right? You're super excited. Oh, I can do this. I can make $1 million.
Grandiose.
That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Very grandiose, right? And then you have your actual level of performance, which is much lower usually than grandiose reality, right? And so what the book talks about is the space in between causes a level of discomfort, right? And that drives a lot of people to not be able to deal with that, so they want to escape from that. And a good way to escape from that is booze,
Right.
right? So I'm like, okay, That's exactly why I drink, because I want to be the best and the superstar of everything, going back to first grade, right? And now in life, boy, I've hit some real life, and I have some major wins in my life, right? But then I started getting to a season where average performance, and I was missing my grandiose, right? And then I threw booze in the mix. What happens when you throw booze in the mix? Right. You get more grandiose. Your expectations go higher. Now, hey, I got some ground to make up, so I'm going to set the goal even higher.
Not based on any kind of semblance of reality.
Nothing. It's all
Right.
the grandiose bullshit.
Yep.
You know that are ism. Let's call it the ism. That our ism drives. Right. So now that you're drinking and you add booze in the mix, your performance gets even worse.
Right.
So now, because of all this, the gap gets bigger.
Right.
And if you couldn't handle little, you can't handle bigger. So now you drink more to escape more.
It sounds like a terrible merry-go-round to be
The
on.
cycle, man. It's a merry-go-round that I could not get off. And it just got worse and worse. The merry-go-round went faster and faster, harder to get off. You know, and finally, you know, I failed so many times at trying to get off the merry-go-round. And that's why I finally surrendered. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get sober. Now, to our topic, when good isn't good enough, over time, and we always laugh that we're on the slow train, or at least I'm on the slow train. You're on the fast train sometimes. You just make shit happen sometimes. But for me, I'm on the slow train. But over time, in sobriety, I no longer had grandiose expectations.
No.
My expectations were starting to become very realistic. And frankly, my sponsor helped me set some of those expectations, right? Because we talked through all this stuff. Hey, I want to do this. You know, I think that's a little too high, right? What if we just do this? You know, I'd be like, oh, that's a loser, you know, that's a sucker, you know. But he talked me into it. And finally, you know, I started working down that bar of expectations or goals, and then what I realized is in sobriety, my performance improved, right? So then I was able to, on most days, you know, a couple days I would exceed that line of expectations. And some days I was still below it, but the gap wasn't big, right? And I was able to say, hey, I tried, right? I gave it my best. I still didn't hit the goal. Now, it doesn't mean you sit there and reroute your life to absolute suck-ass low expectations.
No,
right?
Not at all.
First of all, I think you should expect low of everybody else around you.
Right, yes.
But your self-expectations, you know, you sit there and say, hey, I just want to be realistic.
Right.
You know, for example, in work, right, we have a couple profit levers or performance levers that we can pull to be out of this world amazing, right? And I'm telling everybody, no, we're not going to etch that in at this time. Like, why, if we're going to 100, right, and our goal's 100, why sit there and say, well, let's set the bar for 1,000, right? I'm saying, look, let's keep the bar at 100, and let's get to 5, to 6, to 7, right? And then when we're at 80 to 100, okay, put out a press release and expand it to 150, right, to 200. Don't go to 1,000, right, because that just sets you up for failure, right? But then when you look at those days when your bar is reasonably set of expectations, and you need somebody to help you do it. You can't read the label in your own jar. I think that's one of our secret to success is we get input from other people, right? You know, and at work, I got a bunch of advisors. In AA, I got a bunch of brothers. I got sponsor. You know, I got the big book. I got all kinds of input from AA, right? In my church group, you know, I got all kinds of input, right? All kinds of guardrails, and right. So my ego doesn't say I'm the smartest one in the room. I know everything. I'm going to set the bars, right? I have people help me today, so that's a big win. But then I think, what happens when you've given your best? And you've absolutely can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I've given it all I've got, you know, and still fail. And it's still not good enough. And you still lose that marriage. You know, you still lose that relationship. You know, you lose that business, right? You lose the sale, right? You lose the round of health.
Yep.
You know, hey, I got some health diagnosis, right? I'm starting to change the way I live. I'm starting to live better. I'm starting to do what the doctor says. I'm being compliant. And yet, crap, the next results just got worse. Right? So that's something that I think is challenging. You know, I think part of that is expectations. You know, not everything's going to work out.
Well, I really think that's the key.
That was a Super Bowl win.
Because you went the spectrum of a bunch of different scenarios there, and many of your scenarios that you painted out, your deliverable is based on somebody else's action, right? So I want to have a happy marriage. I can do everything I can do to drive that happiness, but I can't be happy for my significant other. I can't do it. I mean, they've got to find their own pace, their own zone, right? And if they don't want to be in the marriage, they don't want to be in the marriage based on nothing I did. It comes back to what you said, expectations. What are my expectations? Did I have realistic expectations that I could save a relationship that had already soured for whatever reason? I met with a new guy this week, and I really met with him.
Did you really?
Yeah, I met with him based on...
Where did you meet him? I love hearing these stories.
Yeah, so a friend of a friend really started talking to this person's mom, and you know, her expectations were not real coming right out of the box, right? Because
instant healing.
She wanted instant healing, and I said, well, you know, I can queue up a coffee, but let's set our let's be real about what's going to happen at the coffee. All that's going to happen at the coffee is two guys are going to get to know themselves a little bit more, each other a little bit more. That's what's going to transpire. I mean, it depends. And when I went into the meeting, Glenn, I just kind of paused and prayed and said, just make this 1 hour significant. And I didn't even define significant. I let significance play out the way it would play. I just wanted it to be significant enough that that it would drive yet another session.
Next step.
That's it.
Right.
That's it. And because that was my expectation, it came through. Because, as you said, I didn't set it at 1,000. I set it at 80, and I figured there was a good probability that we could hit 80 if I just stayed in the moment and didn't try to hit 1,000. You know, because I would have blown it if I would have came in hot. Right, I would have been no different than the people that are already surrounding him in his life that are coming in hot at him.
So I think, you know, what I'm hearing, the theme that I'm hearing from you as you share that is experience and wisdom, or wisdom built on experience, right? Because early on, you know, you want to be the guy, you want to save everybody, right? But now you know, hey man, that's not how this works. Right, so you've got the experience and wisdom to you know, put some realism in here and say, you know what, I don't want to get him to walk down the aisle and kneel down and get cured, right? All in 1 hour, coffee time. Right. You know, this is a process. This is a path. This is a lifetime commitment of, you know, living sober and doing the right things. And sometimes it starts with baby steps.
And yes, you're absolutely right. And the other thing that you said during your time was, the way you said it was, there are differences. The young man I'm working with is a young man. He's 23 years old. I'm 65 years old. Okay, we don't listen to the same music.
Big difference.
We don't do a lot of this. We don't drive the same cars. We don't dress the same. He hasn't had the experience I've had, nor have I had the experience.
Bet your hole in the souls are pretty similar.
Well, there you go. That's the connection.
I know. That's the similarity.
The big question is, wow, how did that make you feel?
Right.
Because I can connect on a feel level. It doesn't matter what kind of car I drove or drove into what I drove into with that car. It doesn't matter. What matters is, where were you at emotionally? Where were you at physically emotionally when that happened? And again, success because it was significant enough to warrant another time.
Right.
But
I think that is, first of all, it makes him palatable for him to eat.
Right.
Not trying to solve his whole life in one world, not laying down all these changes, not cramming, here's 12 steps. You're going to sit in front of me on step 5 and tell me every time you shit your pants.
Right.
No. That's so overwhelming. It's just have a connection, share some hope. I understand you. I relate. Here's what's next.
Right.
And make it a very, I remember that afternoon that I surrendered in September 2014, and I'm sitting on my counselor's floor, and you know what the first step was that night? When I surrendered, he goes, okay. He goes, go back, get unpacked. He said, tonight is sober movie night. And I'm like, okay. He didn't say go back and memorize the big book. He said, you know what? Tonight's sober movie night. I'm like, I literally in my mind thought, okay, I can handle that. Right? So I went to sober movie night saying, all I got to do is sit here, right? There's like 10 guys, and we watched the movie Superbad. So I lowered that bar of expectations so low. All I had to do was stay alive, and I hit the bar.
Right.
Stay awake. I didn't even have to stay awake, but I did. But, and I'm like, these guys are laughing.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they're in sober living.
Yeah.
Their lives are devastated.
Yeah, right. And
Just
they're
like my
laughing.
life is devastated.
Yeah.
And here we're laughing at this on sober. I was like, okay, I can do sober movie night.
Right.
I didn't have to solve every problem in my life, every problem in the world. One little step.
That's
was awesome.
Absolutely the thing. And the real, what I walked away from the session, just to kind of close up on that, is with hope. And I'll tell you why I have hope. Because the window to spirituality is open with this young man. And that's all I'm looking for. Because if it was slammed shut, I would have a harder time because it's open. I think there's a real fair shot here.
Yeah, but I still, and I'm not trying to critique you. If you talked to me the first time, that window of spirituality was absolutely shut, nailed shut, locked shut, bars on it. That thing was never going to fucking open again.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't.
There you go. Yeah.
But I had hope to go to sober movie night. And it took 2 years for that window to start cracking open on the spirituality. Now it's wide open.
Yeah, right.
But I mean, so one of the things that I wrote down is, when you, I can't tell you some of the small steps how it helps you to build confidence, right? Knowing you did the right thing, knowing, hey, I went to sober movie night, right? I got through this initial, like with your guy, I got through the initial coffee. I got through that, right? And sometimes
that's big.
It's the smallest little things that are the biggest impact. Because it's like, hey, I'm in this sober world. I have no idea what this looks like. I have no idea what I'm doing. But I just took one small step, into the right direction, away from getting drunk yet another night. Was he drunk when you were talking to him?
No.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a win, right? So then that takes me back to my dial, right? You got a lot of faith, and then you see the shit work, and the dial changes from faith to fact. And then the more it turns from faith to fact, the more confidence dial turns up, and I mean, I have confidence now. I don't have ego. I have confidence. I was talking to one of my sponsees, and like, hey, we have enough track record. There is nothing that we cannot get through without having to take a drink. We just don't have to drink.
So how is that fact dial? Let's go back to your business scenario. Let's say your goal was 100. Let's say you're towards the end of the month and you're at 20. Okay, I mean you are driving towards failure at that point. How do you rationalize in your head that that's good enough?
So, first of all, I'm never going to the end of the month 20 out of 100. I mean, I might be 92 out of 100. And I'm okay with that, right? I'm like, hey, I'm not perfect. I live my life. I joke with you. I joke with everybody. I live my life at 92.
Right.
I used to live my life at 110. Right. Puts a lot of pressure on you.
It's a lot of pressure.
A lot of pressure. At 92, it's like I can mess up.
Right.
I can mess up. I got a couple of weeds on my sidewalk that I'm going to pull today. Am I upset about it? No, I'm going to pull them. And so I forgive myself. I give myself some grace. Knowing that I wake up every morning. There's times, like on weekends, right? I usually do to-do list on weekends, 20 long.
Sure.
Right? And sometimes I'll get through 12. And I used to beat myself up. I'm like, Glenn, you're working 80 hours a week. Give yourself a break. Give yourself some grace. You give other people a lot of grace. Give yourself some grace. And I remind myself of that, 110. It's impossible to be at 110. It's impossible to get 110% of your glass filled with coffee.
Right.
It's impossible.
No. Right.
Spillage. Right. So stop with the. I'm not sure if the word's euphemism or whatever it is, but stop with the bull crap of being over excessive, of being grandiose, right? And be realistic. And I put realism. I was talking to this new investor yesterday. He's like trying to push me, and I'm like, no. I said we're not there. I said it would be irresponsible of me. It would be reckless of me to make levels of commitments, at the 110% when we're not even at 100. I said we're going to get to 100. That's what I'm going to commit to you. And he goes, I respect that. Because everybody's trying to sell somebody, sell a bunch of goods, and I don't know, man. This program you work, I work really hard, and when good's not good enough, give myself some grace. I know you do the same thing.
Yep.
And we're trying to impose that message on others because it just leads to a more peaceful life.
It really does. And, I think it comes back to your page 556, and that's the acceptance page, right?
That's totally acceptance piece.
Yeah, and it's just kind of accepting. I had expectations going into my coffee, and I had to accept how that coffee was going to end, regardless of my input. I had to accept how it was going to be perceived by him, and I can't be in his brain. I don't know how he perceived it, but I'll tell you what. When I said, "Hey, you want to grab another coffee next week?" He said, "Yeah, let's do that." I said, "That's good enough."
You know what? I think that is, especially as a sponsor, to have realistic expectations. Hey, you got to know you carry the message, not the alcoholic, right? You got to be there. You got to be available. You got to have the message. You got to live the message, and then to carry it. And what it can't do if he said, "Nah, I don't want to do it," it can't throw you off.
Right.
Because it has nothing to do with you.
No, it has nothing to do with me.
What they say is really important. When they're ready, you can't say anything wrong.
Well, I think about the many, many, many the thousands of lines that came my way that made sense, but I wasn't ready.
But the thing about you is you are there, right? And that's when people are ready, when people are ready, you can't say anything wrong. And when people aren't, you can't say anything right.
Right.
And I've seen you are such the missionary. Remember that one Zoom meeting during COVID? Guy was at work, and you visited him at work during the Zoom meeting, snuck up behind him and to give him his coin. I mean, that's him. That says we do this together, man.
Right.
We no longer do it alone.
Right.
So, man, I love walking the path with you. And, when good isn't good enough, I mean, hey, I love being competitive. I'm not as competitive anymore, but, I look at my own bar today, and I look at the expectations of my sponsor, of the program, of my God, and I just do my best. And am I perfect? No. Am I good enough? Most times.
I look at my own bar,
and I'm okay with that.
I look at my own bar, and it's empty. Get it?
Different
kind of bar.
I do get it. I do.
I love you, brother.
I love you too, man.
All right. Have a great day.
See you, man.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@sober.coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.